After last week, I think it's going to be pretty interesting seeing how Baltimore lines up on defense against Josh Allen. Because, I don't think last week represents, one of those blueprint games. Oh, is this the blueprint to stopping Josh Allen, blitz the crap out of him, and then have really good players on the back end? No, because that's quite difficult to do. The Ravens obviously used to be a really blitz-happy team when Wink was the defensive coordinator and they were dialing up pressure from all over the place. They don't do it as much anymore. This season, Baltimore blitzes 27.5% of the time, which is 16th. Bang average, essentially. So what they need to do to combat Josh Allen is not going to be sending a ton of pressure. It's not going to be dropping back into coverage. I think their strategy has to be just mix it up enough to keep him off balance and try and at least make him sit there and diagnose what's going on before he makes the play and kills it anyway. So that to me, I think, is the real matchup to watch. Is Josh Allen is still an alien. The guy is still ridiculously difficult to contain, to slow down, to stop. He is that offense effectively, with help from Stephon Diggs and all those kinds of things. But you don't have the horses, you don't have the game plan, you don't have the defense to do what Miami did. You're going to have to do it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it's a different scheme in Baltimore too, because they're playing less man coverage. They're playing more zone, like we've talked about. It's kind of a league-wide trend. And I feel like the Ravens kind of have to. Remember I mentioned last week, it was Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey both had excellent grades. It was like they were in the 90s, and the next three corners on the roster were in the 20s and 30s for the Ravens. Not saying that's a thing that happens every single week, but it's just top-heavy over there in that secondary. So how do the Bills exploit those mismatches? Because if Stephon Diggs is on guys like Brandon Stevens and Jalen Armour-Davis, the way they're playing, it's a massive mismatch. So are they gonna play more man? Are they gonna do more shadowing with a Marlon Humphrey, with a Marcus Peters against some of the better Bills receivers? Or are they just gonna say, okay, we're gonna play it soft, keep things in front of us? That's a huge question for me. And then we talked about the Bucs offensive line. I'll reiterate too, the Bills offensive line has not been great this year. They were kind of getting away with it the first 2 weeks, but from a pass protection standpoint, the Ravens might be able to get some pressure. Their edge rushers have been kind of hit or miss, but Justin Houston's still playing good ball, and Justin Madubuike, guy that I really liked coming out of college a couple years ago. They grabbed him in the third round. He's playing the best ball of his career, 84.1 grade. He's got the highest grade on that Baltimore defense so far. I would just keep an eye on him rushing from the interior for the Ravens defense.
Neither of these offensive lines have been particularly good. I think they both rank in the bottom half of offensive lines in the NFL so far this season. Buffalo's is definitely, it's clinging on. Like, they're not where they've been. This is the risk. We've said this for a while, of this approach of try and get average across the board. That's great. That's fine. That's a good strategy. But sometimes it doesn't function if you get the low end of the variance of the 5 average guys, because all of a sudden that's by definition below average, and you get struggles. So the run blocking in particular for Buffalo has been bad. I think they would take that trade-off, below average run blocking versus good pass blocking, but even the pass blocking hasn't been good. Like, Roger Saffold was brought in. People like that move, I think, because you think back to what Roger Saffold was at his best, but the man has been dealing with a lot of injuries over the last few years. And Roger Saffold in 2022 is not the same as Roger Saffold, back when he was playing at his best, 2020, 19, 18, that kind of thing. So he's been having a pretty rough time of it. The interior generally is pretty weak. I think that's definitely an area where Baltimore can exploit. And their pass rush, they're another team where they don't necessarily have a superstar, but they've got a lot of guys chipping in with pressure. Like, all of them are generating pressure, including Justin Houston, who's still trucking on.
I love the edge rushers that just keep going. Like Dwight Freeney, he slowed down. They all slowed down a little bit, but they just keep producing.
Justin Houston's not even that old. It's just that he dealt with a lot of injuries, and he felt like he was on the way down.
He did, yeah, exactly.
So early in his career.
So here's a list of players that are, per ESPN, listed as questionable for the Buffalo Bills. Ryan Bates, offensive line. Ed Oliver on the defensive line. Mitch Moore, center. Jordan Poyer, safety. Tommy Doyle, tackle. Dawson Knox, tight end. Jordan Phillips, defensive tackle. Dane Jackson, corner. Deion Dawkins, tackle. Cam Lewis, corner. Gabe Davis, wide receiver. And Justin Murray, tackle. It's the Bills' questionable list.
Yeah, that's quite extensive. What's interesting to me is that you're still dealing with the majority of the Bills starting secondary out. Not just questionable, but like done. Tre'Davious White is still not back. Micah Hyde is on IR, so he's missing a few more weeks. And Christian Benford, the rookie, is not playing either. He's had surgery on a thumb injury, a hand injury, something like that. So what's fascinating is that as much as they lost the game and they gave up some, like, the backup secondary essentially did a pretty good job against Miami, particularly when you consider Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and what that offense has been doing so far. It's actually bizarre how sort of personnel proof this Buffalo defense is. They can lose a lot of players and have no real visible evidence of the downturn in personnel and talent.
They have done a great job.
So they're facing Baltimore. Obviously, the Ravens have a unique offense, the Lamar Jackson thing. Lamar Jackson's only making himself money so far this season in terms of his contract negotiation. The last time Baltimore faced Buffalo was back in 2020, right, in the playoffs, where Lamar had like 190 total yards. So, okay, they don't have the same personnel, either team, but if this well-coached, well-schemed Buffalo defensive unit can put a lid on Lamar Jackson, where they're weakest is the area that Baltimore doesn't really love attacking, in terms of wide receivers out wide. I actually kind of like Buffalo's ability to slow down Baltimore and put a cap on that. And then the whole game comes down to what can the Ravens defense do against Josh Allen? And I'm saying they can't slow him down enough. So I'm going to take Buffalo.
You're going to take Buffalo. I was going to pose the question, like, if last week didn't happen, if Buffalo didn't lose last week, we didn't know that game happened.
But I even think,
how would you feel about Buffalo? Because we thought a week ago, we were like, they're a juggernaut. Everything that they're doing, 4-man rush and still pressuring, playing nickel and still not giving it up against the run. They're just,
to me,
winning the cheat code so far.
Even though they lost, they came out of that game with an enhanced reputation, not a diminished one. Yeah. I think both teams emerged from that game with more credit than they went into it with.
I'm interested
Miami, obviously, for winning, and Buffalo for actually getting as close as they did despite everything that was going against them.
I'm interested in this Buffalo pass rush, which they have a pass rush grade over 90. The only other team over 80 in the NFL is the Dallas Cowboys by our team pass rush grades. Boogie Basham at 93, Gregory Rousseau at 89, Von Miller at 89. But it's not just about winning blocks, it's about containing Lamar as well. I want to see how they play that, because you can't just get upfield. You got to play contain. Not that he's a big-time scrambler, but game on the line, Lamar's going to have the ball in his hands. So it's a matchup to watch there. I think I like Baltimore here, man. I think Buffalo's too banged up for this back-to-back. And if we're using the Miami's beat up from last week, Buffalo still has to be kind of beat up a little bit too.